Zillow just flipped their housing market forecast for 2025 because they believe on average that home prices will decrease this year. However, this does not mean we're going to have a housing market crash like we saw in 2008. And on top of that, home values will still increase in some markets across the United States. Because of this, I'm going to share some metrics that you should track in order to determine which direction your housing market is headed. I will also share how Zillow's forecast compares to other companies such as Realtorcom and Fannie Mae, for example. I'm Jason Walter, a realtor here in Sacramento, California, reporting unbiased reports of the housing market in the US since 2019. If you guys haven't subscribed just yet, I invite you to do so. So please do that. I appreciate you very much. I have a lot to share in today's video. So thank you everyone for joining me, and let's begin. So here's Zillow's housing market forecast for 2025. By the way, they also share their forecast for home sales as well. I'll share how this all compares to pre-COVID levels, but also how this compares to 2008 as well. So according to Zillow, this was just posted on April 18th this year. Zillow's latest forecast indicates a decrease in home values coupled with an increase of existing home sales in 2025. Existing home sales excludes brand new home construction, excludes brand new home sales. While mortgage rates are in an especially unpredictable period, barring unforeseen shocks, Zillow expects rates at the end of the year will be at 6.5%. So that's on average for a 30-year fix, 6.5% by year end. Now here's Zillow's real estate market predictions. So on average, they're saying here that home values are projected to drop by 1.9% this year, a revision because their previous forecast posted 1 month ago was calling for an increase in prices up by 0.6% in 2025. The combination of rising available listings, which is another word to say a significant increase in the amount of houses for sale or housing inventory, and elevated mortgage rates is signaling potential price drops by year's end. Again, I'm going to share different trends because every market is different. With increased supply, an increase in the amount of houses for sale, buyers are gaining more options and time to decide, while sellers are cutting prices at record levels to attract bids or offers from home buyers. Now, speaking of that, this is also according to Zillow. I'll provide a link in the video description below for all these articles. On average, 23.5% of homes for sale in the United States in March had a price cut. So about one fourth, had a price drop in March this year. That's an increase from the 21% we saw in February and the 20.6% we saw 1 year ago. Obviously, every market's different. So on average, it's at around 23 to about 24%. But look at the map here. In Sacramento, California, where I'm of course located, the share of price drops is also in line with the national average at around 24%. In contrast, in San Jose, a very strong seller's market there, home prices increasing greatly there. The share of price drops is only at 15.3%. Provo, Utah, 28%. Salt Lake City, 28%. Let's look at this though. Phoenix, Arizona, which is right there, the share price drops quite a bit higher compared to the national average at 24%. There, it's at 37%. Also, Tucson's at 32%. In contrast, Dallas is at 30%, Austin, Texas, 25.7%, and Houston at 26%. Then if we move on to Florida, look at Tampa. The price cuts at 34%, Northport, Florida at 37.7%, Palm Bay, Florida, 33%, Deltona, 31%, and Jacksonville, Florida at 31%. In stark contrast, look at the Northeast. Much of the Northeast has a lack of price cuts, which generally means that they're not going to have as much downward pressure on home prices. Areas that have a high percentage of price cuts obviously means that they're going to have some downward pressure on home prices. So the areas that have a lack of price cuts, look at that. New York only at 12.6%. New Haven, Connecticut, 15.4%. You can see here, much of the Northeast has a lack of price cuts right now. So speaking of price cuts, the reason why some areas have a big increase in price cuts is because they have a glut of houses for sale. I really like to look at the level of house inventory levels this year compared to 2019. So here's a chart that Resi Club Analytics put together for the biggest markets, the 200 biggest markets nationwide. So the biggest increase of inventory compared to April of 2019 is in Temple, Texas, the greater area there. A 104% increase in the amount of houses for sale since April of 2019. After that, we have Punta Gorda, Florida, Colorado Springs, Colorado, et cetera, et cetera. I actually looked at this as well. Sacramento is not one of these 69 markets that have more inventory compared to 2019. So out of the 200 markets or 200 biggest cities, 69 of those have more houses for sale compared to April of 2019 right now. Austin, Texas is an increase up by 57%. Another way to look at this is this map right here from Resi Club. So for example, Killeen and Temple, Texas, that greater area, up by a staggering 104%. Right now, as of April, there's just over 2,400 houses for sale. Look at 2022 and 21. 354 and only 410 houses for sale. Now there's basically like 2,000 more now this April. Also at 2,400 in Killeen, that's the highest April levels since, keywords here, since at least April of 2017. Also, Austin, Texas, like I mentioned, up by 57%. That's also the highest levels for the month of April since at least April of 2017. Let's look at Sacramento. This is a greater Sacramento area, probably a half an hour drive of Sacramento. We're down by 8%, quite a bit different compared to Austin, Texas. They're up by 57%. So in the greater Sacramento area, we're down by 8%. We have around 4,100 houses for sale, which is higher compared to post-COVID, but lower compared to pre-COVID levels. So back in April 2019, around 4,500 houses for sale. This is quite a bit different compared to other pandemic boom towns. So for example, the Denver metro area is at 10,345 houses for sale. This is more than double that of April of 2017 and 2018. And on top of that, it's up by 59.7% since April of 2019. Let's have a look at Florida. So in Punta Gorda, Florida, up by a staggering 95.9%, 4,800 homes for sale, just under 4,900 exactly. This is quite a bit higher compared to any month going back, or any April going back to 2017 as well. And then let's look at Lakeland, Winter Haven, Florida, up by a staggering 71%. In contrast, Virginia Beach, Virginia, down 54% from April of 2019. Hartford, Connecticut, down a staggering 76%. And you guys see here, the areas shaded in red or yellow are areas that have a lack of houses for sale. And of course, areas in dark green have a glut of houses for sale, such as Denver, for example. So going back to what I said at the very beginning of this video, if you guys want to see which direction your housing market's headed, have a look at inventory levels, but also price cuts as well, because areas that have more house for sale compared to pre-COVID levels are areas in which home price growth is kind of being minimal, or prices are going down. In contrast, areas such as much of the Northeast that have a lack of homes for sale are still experiencing a big increase in home prices there. Before I share Zillow's housing market forecast for home sales, I want to share how their forecast for home values to decrease by 1.9% this year compares to the Great Recession of 2008. So here's a data poll I pulled from the National Association of Realtors, which I am able to have access to this for free because I'm a realtor here in Sacramento. If you guys are not a realtor, by the way, it would cost you $1,500 to have access to this file. Of course, I'm only looking at these numbers here that I pulled from their website. Everything else is based on my own analysis. Anyways, I want to mention this because what is a 1.9% average decrease compared to the Great Recession? So in 2007, compared to 2006, home values, I should say not home values, the median sold price. So Zillow looks at home values and the National Association of Realtors looks at the median sold price. So the middle number in prices that have homes actually have sold, right? Median sold price. So in 2007, prices decreased by 1.3%. In 2008 compared to 07, a decrease down by 9.5%. Then 2009, look at that, nearly a 13% decrease in one single year. And then we had flat prices in 2010 and 11 decreased by 3.9%. And of course, thereafter, prices increased quite a bit, a giant increase in 2013, up by 11.5%. So the reason why I mention this, because a 1.9% decrease is not even close to what we saw in 2008. And why is that? Or what is one of the main contributors of that? And that is housing supply. In order to see a big decrease in prices for any asset, you need to see a huge increase in supply and a decrease in demand, right? An imbalance between supply and demand. That's the way that we see prices decrease. And in 2005 through 2010, we had over 2.5 million houses for sale. As of March of this year, on a national level, we have 1.3 million homes for sale. Therefore, inventory was more than 2 times greater from 2005 through 2010 compared to this March. 1.3 million this March compared to the big increase of inventory that we saw those years. And in fact, it peaked at around 2007 at 3.5 million. And that's one of the reasons why we saw a big decrease in prices in 08 and of course in 09. And of course, this is one of the main reasons why I do not expect to see a sharp correction or a housing market crash like we saw in 2008, because we have a lack of house for sale, historically speaking. Obviously, there was more things involved in there regarding the subprime crisis, people getting loans they couldn't qualify for, adjustable rate mortgages, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, this is one of the main contributors to the decrease in prices, because we had a glut of homes for sale during the Great Recession. All right, going back to Zillow's housing market forecast here, it says existing home sales are projected to reach 4.2 million in 2025. That would be a 3.3% increase from the previous year. As spring arrives and the home shopping season heats up, like it does every single year, Zillow anticipates a temporary surge in sales, followed by a normal seasonal slowdown. Obviously, home sales tend to peak around the spring home buying season and obviously taper off once we hit the winter months, for example. If home prices soften and rates decrease, existing home sales could benefit from improved affordability by year end. So what they're seeing here is that if home prices decrease a little bit, and if mortgage rates also decrease as well, it's going to be more affordable for people to buy houses, and that could cause home sales to increase. So leave me a comment below your thoughts regarding that. So here's something I did for you guys as well. If we have 4.2 million home sales of existing houses this year in the United States, how's that compared to years past? So 4.2 million, that'd be an increase up by around 3.4% compared to 2024. So this is a very small increase based on a very low number that we saw in 2024. That was nearly a 30-year low in home sales that we saw last year. So at 4.2 million, this would be extremely low levels, because the median number since the year of 1989 is around 5 million. So we should expect to have around 5 million per year on average, historically speaking. And over the past 3 years, we have just around 4 to 4.2 million. So this would mean if we get to 4.2 million this year, we basically would be missing around 3 million home sales over the past 3 years. Absolutely insane. This does not translate, though. Just because we have a lack of transactions, this does not translate to a housing market crash or a big correction, because home prices still increase in 2023 and 2024, despite the fact that home sales were basically at a 3-decade low. So if you guys want to see a housing market crash on a national scale, you would need to see supply. I mean, supply would have to absolutely explode. So we'd have to have a giant increase of housing inventory. On top of that, we'd have to see supply far outpace demand. and for the labor market to crater as well. So we had to see unemployment spike and also supply increase as well to see a housing market crash. But based on data I shared with you guys today, obviously we're not seeing that because we have a lack of homes for sale, historically speaking, especially compared to 2008. So here's what I did for you guys as well. I looked at other companies, Redfin, Realtorcom, and Fannie Mae for their predictions this year. So again, Zillow at 4.2 million sales, prices to decrease by 1.9%. This, by the way, is quite a bit different compared to months past. So about 3 months ago, Zillow was predicting for home values to rise by 2.9% this year. Now their forecast is expecting a 1.9% decrease. This, of course, is likely from a steady increase of housing supply and a higher for longer mortgage rate environment. Redfin, on the other hand, actually Redfin and Realtorcom actually posted their real estate market predictions back in December before we had these tariffs and all these other things happening nationwide. So back then, they were predicting that we're going to be around 4.1 to about 4.4 million sales. Prices rise by 4%. Realtor.com is expecting prices to rise by 3.7% and around 4.1 million transactions this year. Fannie Mae just announced this about 3 weeks ago. They're expecting that sales of existing houses to be just under 4.2 million, right in line with Zillow, and for home prices to rise by 4.1%. Quite a bit different compared to Zillow's forecast, down 1.9%. Now here's Fannie Mae's predictions for the market as a whole. I found this to be really interesting here because take a look at this. Here is home prices based on Fannie Mae's HPI, or their home price index. So this is Q1 of 2025. Here's Q1 of 2026. So they're basically forecasting, this obviously by quarter, they're basically forecasting that every single quarter through Q4 of 2026, that home values based on their HPI will increase, but is steadily going to be decreasing. So by the time we hit Q4, we're going to be at 4.1% increase compared to 2024, and in 2026 up by 2% compared to 2025. So this is kind of this deceleration we've been talking about for quite some time, that we're basically going to be at half the rate in 2026 compared to the past couple of years. And one of the reasons for this is obviously due to the increase of inventory, but also due to the fact that rates are going to be very stubborn at around 6% for quite some time. So by the time we hit the end of 2025, on average, the average for a 30-year fix is going to be at 6.5%. Then next year, on average for the whole year as a whole, at 6.1%. But this is something that really caught my attention here. Q4 25 through Q4 of 2026, we're basically going to be stuck at around 6 to 6.2%. This is obviously much better compared to 2024. We had rates in the upper 6s to 7%, but given the fact that home prices haven't decreased very much at all, this is causing housing affordability issues for many home buyers, which is one of the contributing factors why home values or home prices will not increase as much as years past. And with that said, if you guys want a real estate agent referral, check out my website, which is realestateteamfinder.com. Hope you guys have an amazing day. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Also, let me know what you guys think about this new background as well. Added a plant as well. Anyways, thank you everyone for joining me. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you in the next video.